YouTubers, another quick game of interplanetary I Spy going on here. Today we're looking at Sol 901 to 903 on the Gigapan site here, MSL. You can see the number there, MSL 901 to 903. And this one has been sitting on my desktop for a while. I've been very busy recently, and I just found it again. I thought, and I found a match for it as well, which when you see it, you'll be like, wow, this is pretty cool. Here it is up in the top. This is the top left corner. I'll just zoom in for you very quickly. And basically, we have here what looks like a blade. Now, it seems to have broken here, and it has this unusual hook-like part sticking out. But it's very nicely shaped and has a very, very smooth, nice long curve to it there, and is fairly symmetrical. And I was pondering, looking at it, thinking, could it be a piece of pottery? Now, if that was pottery or rock, had it split like this, it would have broken. There's no way a rock or a piece of pottery or clay or whatever would have stayed together had it split in this way here. Now, I've got a couple of enhancements of it here. I'll try and keep it short. Here's the original clip here, and there's the highlight. Here it is a bit closer. We'll zoom in a bit to that. I mean, it doesn't get really clear, like all these images, they're not very good quality. But this is reasonably close to the rover, and it's about 5 inches long, I think. Not much longer than that. It could be less. It's very deceptive, as I've said before with these images. They make you think things are a lot bigger, but they're not. Let's get a bit closer. Here we go. Here's the enhancement. Right. Now, pay attention to the pitting and texture, as well as the shape. We've got a very shiny, light-coloured edge on the right here, which looks like a blade, at the edge of a blade. And we have a nice point. It's a bit vague up there, but it's a bit out of focus there. I have sharpened it a bit here, as you can see, and I've just white balanced it and played with the contrast. I haven't done much to it at all. But it is a very symmetrical shape. And this part sticking out was really interesting. So I had a look on Google Images and managed to find a very similar looking thing from Earth. Now, there are many types of these things on Earth. They're called billhooks, or there are many. I mean, when I say there's many types, there are thousands of different shapes of these things down here. And these were basically used by people in medieval farmers. They're still used today. They're much like a machete, but they're a little bit more versatile than a machete. The hook on it is useful, and basically they were used in warfare in the Middle Ages by warriors who couldn't necessarily afford a very expensive sword. In the English army, for instance, the poorer warriors, the farm workers who would sign up for the army, would take their farming implements with them and use them on the battlefield. And often they would take farming implements like this. Now, sometimes these would come with a very long blade, much like a halberd or pole arm. But this was the closest one I found. Now, these would often have a very long pole, which could be 5-6 foot long, sometimes even longer. There are hundreds of different types of these. I can't get across how many there are. And when you start looking into it, you can go on forever and ever. There are so many designs and shapes, and different sizes and styles, you know. But this was the closest I could find, and this is from a pole arm, and it has a very similar hook sticking out here, with this part sticking inwards. Now, I think what this was for actually trying to disarm your opponent. If you had a sword or another weapon, you could catch this on the edge of his weapon and possibly disarm him by twisting the blade and then possibly flipping it out of his hand or something like that. Or the hook would be used for bashing someone on the head with, and it might go through their helmet, for instance. They're very versatile. But this was a very good match, and when you look at them back to back, the angle's not the same. What I'll do is I'll put these images at the end of the video, and I'll turn it around a bit so it kind of matches the same angle. But that I thought was a really good match, and I mean, you don't get any more detail than that. I'll zoom in for you here. You can see here where it's broken. I've sharpened that a bit. And this may have been a bit longer, and the very tip may have broken, but it looks in pretty good shape. And like I said, if this was a rock, there's no way that this would have stayed in one piece. This must be metallic. And it looks very similar to some other things I found recently, excuse me, which I'll show you now. This Mars Warrior helmet. Now, some of you may have seen this already. This was what looks like a warrior helmet on Mars, and I'll just let it play through a little bit. This is called. There we go. It's similar in some that we have on Earth. This is a Saleh combat helmet from about the 15th century on Earth. This is my Mars war helmet or statue part video. So if you haven't watched that, I suggest you go back and watch it. But I have others as well. This is not the only one. And this one seems to have a visor here and a possible dead alien inside it with his chin and a mouth here and some teeth. If you want to see more detail, you want to go back and see some of my previous videos. There's also this one. It looks like a polearm, particularly a glaive. Now, a glaive is a particular style of polearm. Now, this I published over a year ago. Mars Alien Warrior Spear and Humanoid Head. Had almost 10,000 views, this one. Now, the quality of this image that it came from is very, very poor. I might do a remake of this, actually, and see if I can get a better quality image of it. But I'll let that play through a little bit. Now, this is similar, but it's a long, straight, kind of sword-like blade here. And this has still got the pole attached to it. Is it going to play it? Yes, it is. But as I said, the quality of the image is very poor, and it's difficult to determine a lot of detail from it. But when you see the enhancement here, you can see what look like two bolts here, one here, and this is the pole here, and the blade comes right out into a point here and is lying flat in the dirt. But as I said, the quality of the image is pretty terrible. It's probably lost about something like 60% of its information, where they've resized it and mucked around with it a couple of times. So it doesn't really get that clear. In fact, it looks a bit better when you zoom back. You can see it just there. You can see the pole, and there may be another part of the pole elsewhere in this video, up here somewhere. So I suggest going back and have a look at that one. I won't go through it all now. I'm trying to keep this short. So that's another one you can go back and check, because these things are all starting to match up now. And like I've said before, I'm getting to the point now where there's so many of these things that I've discovered in these images that it's starting to build quite an interesting picture. And it looks like, at least in part, that in this area on this area of Mars, in Gale Crater, that there were ancient warriors, and these may be burial items that have been uncovered by erosion, and these may have all been buried or inside tombs. We have found coffin artifacts and coffin lids and coffin boxes and all sorts of things up there recently. So this is all starting to add up, and these may have been buried. And this is one I did a while back also. Let me pause that a sec. This one's called Mars Humanoid Warrior Skull in Helmet. Now this is quite heavily slated and by people at the time, but I do have lots of things to match up with this now, and my helmet and weapon collection, Mars weapons and stuff. If you look at my playlist here, Mars Alien Arms, Armor and Clothing. Now there's like loads of videos in this playlist, and lots of them have things like helmets and weapons, even what looks like a pistol, and various things like what look like swords and implements, that kind of thing. So I do recommend that if you want to have a look, because it's a lot to look through. You can just kind of flick through. You don't have to watch all of it, because there's a lot to get through there. But there's also my other playlist, which is called Mars Weapons Top 6. That's probably a little bit easier to get through, because that's much shorter. So, right, there's this one. I'll play this through very briefly. This was a slightly better quality image, this one to work with, but not great. As you can see, this is untreated. and I did some quite detailed enhancements on this, as you can see. Now, I initially thought this was a plume of feathers or hair coming off the helmet. This is like a nose here, eye here, and a mouth here, and a cheek guard here. I mean, this looks like a damaged helmet with someone still in it. I mean, this may be a carving, of course. And you can actually see the eyes now, and the cheeks sticking out here, and the mouth here. And it becomes more obvious in a minute when it highlights. But I spent quite a lot of time on this, and here we go. Here come the enhancements. This looks like a plume of hair or something coming off the helmet. Now, this may not be. I mean, I may have got this completely wrong. It could be pareidolia. I mean, according to NASA, everything is pareidolia, apparently. But there's that enhancement. Now, that makes it a little bit clearer because I've coloured it differently. So you've got the fleshy orange parts here, eyes, mouth and chin, and it looks like almost a beard here, and the hair coming off the helmet. Now, this also seems to have a big dent in the helmet, so this may be a real guy in a real helmet, much like this one, although this is a completely different design and looks very alien. It looks less human. But from what I've seen so far with these things, there seems to have been more than one sort of race on Mars, and some of them look human and some of them look very alien. And maybe they were fighting each other. This could explain these helmets and weapons lying around in Gale Crater. Or it was a burial site and these things just happened to have been uncovered by erosion. So either way, very interesting, I thought. I'll just show you, let's zoom in a bit. The detail doesn't get great on this because, as with all these things, the image quality is too poor. But you can kind of see what I'm getting at here. It looks like two eyes and a mouth here and a chin and some cheek guards and a very damaged, beaten up helmet. So there we go. Were the warriors on Mars using primitive weapons like we were in the Middle Ages on Earth? Possibly. I mean, but these, like I said, if this is a burial area and there are lots of tombs in this part of Gale Crater, then these may be just warrior tombs that have been uncovered, and this may be a burial item that has been moved from where it was, or just if there was a cataclysm, it could have got thrown up in the air, or who knows? Who knows what happened up there? So there we are. Let's have another quick look at those enhancements quickly. And I'll put a couple of comparisons in at the end of the video, like I normally do. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you soon.